Good evening. My name is Hans Van Wees. I'm the general manager at Hotel Vermont, and want to welcome you here for year 2. At the end of year 2, it seems hard to believe. 2 years ago, we sat around the table and together worked on how could Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies and Hotel Vermont, and how could we work together on bringing great content and great stories to our community, and that's the result of it. And if we look at this year, we kicked it off big with Burton and talking about a global brand in Vermont and the amazing female leadership in that company. Just truly amazing story. To last time when we focused more on the health and had four or five phenomenal speakers as well. And then tonight, where we talk about Makers Matter, and I'll leave it up to the crew here to introduce themselves. But what I want to do tonight is really just thank some people here. And first of all, Dave Bradbury. Dave, did you run out or not? No. Okay, you did not. We did a limited edition of Yeti beer for our ice bar. These are not available in stores anywhere, and these may be the last 2 cans available with appropriate glassware to go with that. And thank you, Dave. Without you, this would not have been possible. So, well, Sam. All right. Sam, thank you. You have really been the driver of this whole event, and it's just been so wonderful to work with you, and just amazing how you pull this together, and as a moderator, just really, I'm truly amazed. Just awesome. Thank you so much. And then finally, Lauren, thank you as well. This is Lauren Sanderson, and she's our marketing coordinator for Hotel Vermont, and has worked very hard together with the VCET team on pulling this together. And I want to thank you too, Lauren, for you a little something too. You didn't know that, but. Thank you. So. They do all the hard stuff. Anyway, extremely proud of our team and of our community and of you tonight. So thank you again. This is another sellout event. A few extra seats left, but we're waiting for a few folks still to get here. Sam, I'm going to hand it over to you. And stand by. We're meeting tomorrow. We're going to talk about what may be next for next year. So, thanks.
Thanks, Hans. Yeah, Hans has been awesome. We had a few ideas to start with and sort of came together as a team, and he's been awesome just saying yes to us, which, is really helpful. Because Dave and I didn't want to, do this at the VCET office. It's good looking, but not quite this caliber. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Sam Roach-Gerber. I'm the Director of Innovation at VCET. We work around the state to promote entrepreneurship and innovation. First of all, huge thank you to Hotel Vermont. It goes without saying, it's just so much more than a hotel. Our media sponsor, RETN. If you haven't seen the previous events, they're all filmed and available for everyone to watch, and they're so incredible. And of course, the beneficiary of this series, so all of the money that you've paid to be here goes to Vermont Works for Women. And they just do incredible work. So look them up and see what they're doing. It's outstanding. I just want to know quickly, who has never been to a female founders event before? Wow. Yes. That's what I like to hear. Did you have to kill people for tickets? Was it worth it? Yes. Great. That's awesome. And how many of you are business owners or want to start your own business? Hell yeah. Awesome. Really cool. So one of the things I wanted to do is start by sharing some stats from one of my favorite groups in the area, Change the Story. They work to align policy, programs, and philanthropy to ensure that women have a strong sort of economic situation here in Vermont. And I've mentioned these stats before if you've come before, but they're so worth repeating. So according to Change the Story, only 8% of Vermont's highest grossing companies are led by women. And women still, to this day, only make 84 cents to every dollar that a man makes. The good news is that the number of women-owned businesses in Vermont is growing rapidly, actually at twice the rate of men. So in the last several years, between 2007 and 2012, women's businesses grew by 15%, while male-owned businesses grew by 6%. So that's really exciting. And our goal for this Female Founders Series was to encourage inspiring entrepreneurs and to help active entrepreneurs meet the people that they need to meet and the resources they need to find in order to propel their businesses forward. And honestly, we're doing that. So through this series alone, this is the 9th event in 2 years. We've heard from 21 female founders. So we've had 21 female founders up here and telling their stories, all Vermont founders. We've welcomed over 500 attendees and raised over $7,000 for some of Vermont's most important nonprofits. So we're really proud of that, and we couldn't do it without all of you guys attending. Now, finally, I'm done yamming. So the theme of tonight's event is Makers Matter, and this is one I've been super excited about and I've wanted to do for a really long time. As you can see, I basically was just like, what are my favorite things in Vermont? And then I invited all of them up here, and they happened to be women, and I was like, yes. So I will let them sort of introduce themselves and just tell you a little bit about what they do and what their businesses are. But first, I'll just go Sarah Beal, co-founder of Commandeer. Yay. Britt Witt, co-founder of Red House. Jen Kahn, founder of Jennifer Kahn Jewelry. And Tessa Valyou, co-founder of New Duds. How many people here have bought something from one of them? Yeah. See, now you guys have nothing to be nervous about, right? These are your customers. You've talked to them. Exactly. So let's start with you. See, I'm going to do this. So I call her Beal on the field hockey field. So I'm going to try to call her Sarah, but no promises. Beal, let's start with you.
Do you want to just introduce our business?
Tell us about Commandeer.
So we started Commandeer, and we is my mom and I. So I run a store and work full-time with my mother, who's sitting right there, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
She'd be up here too, but just one of us could fit on the
Didn't want to
stool.
have too much Commandeer power up here, you know?
Yeah, and we started Commandeer back in 2013, and we started in a much smaller spot. If anyone went to our Shelburne location, it was super tiny,
Like
but it
11 or
was
something at the time.
What was that?
You were like 11 or something.
Yeah, no.
Just razzing you.
Anywho, yeah, so we started that to prove a model that our customers were interested in American-made. We got our answer, and we moved promptly to a spot in Burlington, which was about 10 times the size of our space in Shelburne, and we've been growing ever since. So it's been a wild ride, and we're having a great time.
You want to go down the line here?
Sure. I'm Britt. I'm co-owner of Red House. My husband Matt and I make wax canvas handbags. As some of you know, I've seen them in the audience tonight. We started our business, I would say we established in 2012, which is kind of when we moved into the Red House, which was the inspiration for sort of figuring our life out in Vermont as we're transplants from Arizona. I've always been a seamstress. I've always just known how to sew. I have no formal training in that. I just, it's been a natural sort of ability I've had. So it was a place that I went to make things for us around the house. And I was encouraged to sort of try and start selling some of those things on Etsy. I had a mentor sort of pushing me in that direction. And Matt sort of stepped in and did things I couldn't do, and we were a natural partnership in that, and it's just grown like I could have never imagined, and I'm so grateful for it. And all of you.
Jen. I've been making jewelry since 2000, and I went to UVM. You also went to UVM? Yes? Let me bring you into this. And I graduated in '01, but my senior year I worked at Frog Hollow on Church Street, and I met Celie Fago, who is an amazing jewelry artist, and I became her apprentice my senior year, and was able to work with her for my last two semesters, and had the money and the time to do so. And as soon as I graduated, I asked if I could become a live-in apprentice, and I ended up spending 9 years in Bethel, Vermont, getting really good at making jewelry. And I started doing the market in 2005, the artist market right next to the farmers market, and I've been doing that for 14 years. So a lot of people wonder how many people have gotten my work. It's from lots of markets every summer. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And now I have my work in over 25 stores in Vermont, and it's been a very slow growing process, but it's been going great, so happy to be here.
Yeah. Awesome. So, last but not least.
My name is Tessa Valyou. My husband and I own a screen printing company. We're located in Winooski. Right now we started in 40th and Allen, originally in 2008 when we got our first studio. We were art majors at UVM. That's how we met. Yeah, New Duds is the, oh my God, yeah. Okay, New Duds is the business. I had this all. I was in the car, practicing.
She didn't plan too
New
much.
Duds is the business. Yeah, I planned too much. We have grown. We now have 5 to 7 employees, depending on the time of year, which sounds amazing. We started just doing it ourselves even before we were married. And yeah, we screen print for others, but we also make our own line of goods, which we sell at Commandeer and also at the artist market. So we've been with Jen at the market for
We're market buddies.
8 years now. We've been there, yeah. So we do a little bit of both.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. 14 years and 8. Dang. That's awesome. All right, Sarah, let's start with you. So Sarah has a really kind of interesting role here because she's not technically a maker, but she sells all of it, which is obviously very important for these folks. Am I right? So Sarah, you guys only carry items made in the USA, and it's a really heavy focus on Vermont makers. Why is that so important to you guys? And that's kind of a plunge. That's a kind of a risky move. It's obviously not cheap to do it that way. Like, why is that so important to you guys?
Yeah, definitely. So often retail stores are really concerned about price, and that's what they're going in there, making sure that their customer can afford the item. And while that's definitely a concern for ours, our bigger concern is how that item was produced and who it's supporting. And so the best way to evoke change is by voting with your dollar. And we feel that, well, we know that American-made products and those made domestically are made with better environmental practices, employment conditions, socioeconomic implications there, as well as, you're really affecting American jobs and making sure that money is staying in your economy. So the effects of, maybe spending an extra $1 on an item are really seen. But in general, we're realists. We know that an American-made lifestyle, completely that is it, is really hard. And so we are not trying to alienate anyone, but really just make American-made more accessible. We proved the model with our Shelburne store. If anyone visited that store, you would have seen that there were mission-based products that were made overseas, as well as some other items that were not mission-based, or you're just like, oh, this is a cool thing. And ultimately, we really found that not only did those things arriving to the store covered in styrofoam really tick my mom and I off, but it also just hurt. We were like, why do we want to be pushing this product next to a Red House bag that just feels really good and will last? And ultimately, we wanted to get into a business of selling your next generation's heirlooms. So the item that you're gonna hand down to your child because it's lasted that long. And so that was a big reason for why we were in business. And so that, why we focus on American made is why we're in business. So it was, yeah, but I'll get off my soapbox.
You
We're
do
realists.
such a good job at it.
we try our best. Yeah,
It's awesome.
to try to work as many makers as we possibly can. So yeah.
Awesome. So I want to jump over to Jen real quick. Jen's like, what? What? Trapped her here. She's in the middle, so she can't escape. So if anyone was wondering, these are Jen Kahn earrings. Thank you. But seriously, I go into any store. I walk down the street in Burlington, and women come up to me like, "Are those Jen Kahn?" Like, if I had a nickel for every time I got that question, it's incredible everywhere I go. And it's become this really cool sort of like camaraderie with other women in Burlington. And so I've always wanted to ask Jen this, so now I have the opportunity. How has that, I'm sure you hear that a lot too, and I just wanted to know, how does that sort of affect your work and how you feel about this community, and how has that sort of impacted your business?
It's the best feeling. It's so confirming that I'm like where I'm supposed to be and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And sometimes I'm like, I should be doing more, but then I'm like, I'm making women feel beautiful and confident. And I'm like, that's really great. And someone just asked me that at a show at Higher Ground the other night and said, I'm actually answering this on a panel, so let me remember what I say. And I said, it's kind of like I've dropped breadcrumbs all over the place, and then I make friends. I mean, it's so fun for me. Anytime I go to a yoga class or the city market or a show for music and see 1, 2, 3 people, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be here. Like, it's like hearing your favorite song come on and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. So it's the best, but it also, it didn't happen overnight. It's like, 20 markets a season for 14 years. And
14 summers.
and then in the past 4 years getting into more and more stores. So now the weird thing is when I compliment someone and I'm like, oh, I like your earrings, and they're like, thanks. And I'm like, they don't know I made them. Someone else sold them to them. So, someone asked me once too, are those Jen Kahn's? And I was like, well, yeah. So. It's the best. It was like in passing, so I don't want to be like,
Yes, I am.
I was told very early on that it's very good to have your name be your business, and there's a lot of reasons I think that that's great, and a lot of reasons it's not, so it's kind of weird to hear myself as a thing, but it's great, and it's I love it.
That's really cool. Awesome. I'm going to jump over to you, Britt. You are not from Vermont. Why did you start your business in Vermont?
Well, we first made the decision to move to Vermont. No business plan, no real idea of what would happen when we got here, other than feeling like we were attracted to the forest, the food culture. I stalked farmers from Arizona. I knew who made the bread, where the milk was being produced. I was crazy about it. I thought we would be farmers, is sort of the running joke. Homesteader, little red house in the middle of nowhere, doing our own thing, looking for that sovereignty, looking for space. And then we got here, and we were like, oh my God, we sold all of our stuff. We don't have an education in animal husbandry, or we've killed 4 Garden Street, seriously rotting on the vine. We have no idea where we are. So Matt got a job, and we ended up renting a place in Shelburne. We lived above a jewelry store for a year and a half with 600 square feet with our 2 kids and the little bit of things that we had. And the bread house popped up a quarter mile down the road. It wasn't in the middle of nowhere, but it was for us. And we moved into it, and not to go on and on, but it's sort of to shift from ending up in this red house, and then also all the people that we were meeting are all entrepreneurs. They're all sort of resilient Vermonters, saying, and if you want to make it here, you gotta do it. You gotta pull up your bootstraps and get it done. And we sort of took inspiration from the people around us and started on this journey and named our business after our house because that was the goal. So I hope that answers your question. That's why. It's because of other Vermonters and what they're doing is sort of inspiring us to do the same. So we found our sovereignty not sort of out in the middle of Northeast Kingdom, say, doing, milking goats, which sounds amazing, actually. But by working for ourselves every day.
Sam Hooper knows how that is.
Yeah, you just sound that amazing.
I really like the image of you stalking farmers in Arizona. I'm just going to keep that one up here.
Yeah, well, our close friends own Bread and Butter Farm, and they were just at dinner Friday night. We were talking about how far both of our stories have come, and I was just like so excited about their bread at the market and introduced myself. I was kind of weird about it.
Vermont celebs, like the best
Yeah,
bread.
I
You're
mean,
like,
everybody's a celebrity here. I mean, they're all making things, doing great things, and I have career envy every day. Like, oh, they're making whittling spoons. I want to do that. Making jewelry. I want to do that. It's really great.
That's awesome. All right, Tessa, let's jump over to you. You're like, oh, man,
We're all like, oh, okay.
You're going to do great. So I think one of the coolest things about your business is you do B2B, you do B2C. You've worked with I wanted to ask you guys how many Vermont businesses you've worked with, but then I realized that's an absurd question, and there's no way you would have ever tracked that. But I think you guys probably have a really interesting sense of what the business community is like. Can you talk a little bit about how that has been just working with so many different businesses?
Yeah, definitely. We pride ourselves that we don't market. We don't put money down for marketing, but I think the word of mouth in Vermont is so strong. And we just, we started with one or two businesses that we were printing their merchandise, basically. And then it just rolls, the brewery community is a good community here. I don't know if you know that. So one person, we print shirts for them, and then they tell the next. And that expands. There's bigger breweries, there's smaller breweries. Just kind of like that in that industry is very similar to so many small micro business industries around here. And a lot of people want a T-shirt with their logo that they work so hard to make, and put it on there and show it off. So we're happy to fit that need, totally happy. Larger screen printers can do the big corporations, the Nikes, the whatever. And then there's the little people doing them out of their basement, which is also awesome. But we're kind of in that middle ground. And Vermont has a lot of businesses in that middle ground, that small, I guess micro. I don't know how many employees you have to be in whatever. Small business is still up to 50, and to me that seems huge. That's a large business. But, so I feel there's a lot of businesses in that ground, and we're pretty willing to help each other out, which is really nice too. So it feels strong. It feels like there's a strong community of business owners who are doing it and doing it well enough to employ some people and to help their community grow a little bit. And we all just make each other, they give us a bigger shirt order because they're doing better and selling more. And then we do better, and it just piles on top like that.
Totally, and I think the word of mouth thing is so true. Also,
yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, I was in a position where I was ordering shirts at one point, and oh, you have to go to New Duds, and I was like, who's New Duds? And they were like, they do this, they do this, they do that. I'm like, oh, yep, that's who I want.
I mean, there is customink.com. Don't go there. Cross that off. A lot of people do go there. They don't realize that there are industries in your town. We're not the only screen printer. You can go to a different one. It's okay. But look within your community. Don't go to testament.com first. See, just do a Google search. See what's in your community. It's out there.
She's just asking for a Google search. Very reasonable request.
That's all I'm saying. Vermont.
Awesome. So I have been wanting to ask Sarah this for a while too. You encounter a lot of small makers. What is most difficult about that, and how can makers help you buy from them? Listen up, ladies.
I'm speaking to all three of you. I'm just kidding. Yeah, you are. We actually have worked with each one of these businesses. Jen, we used to work with you, but there was, zip code protection complications. We'll explain that later. But anywho, yeah, so we work with, at any one time, about 300 to 350 vendors or makers in the store. So we feel like one of our employees is here, Amy, that deals with our inventory. So I feel like she's always drowning in invoices and accounts payable and and receiving and vendor relations, so I apologize. But so there's a lot of obstacles that come along with working with so many small makers. But it's also the beauty of like why we're in business. So like that's, it comes with the territory. I think we, deal with some vendors where we're their first wholesale client. We actually like from the Over Easy did a pitch the last speaking, I guess, arrangement, what like event, we actually purchased from them.
That's
so like we deal with any like level of maker. So there's intricacies for each like spot along the line, and I think the big thing is really just like competition, and realizing that like we're working in such a fragmented market now, like where direct to consumer is like so easy. Like everyone, like we're in competition with the vendors. Like a lot of times, like someone might want to buy directly from the maker, like they want to buy directly from Jen at the maker event. So how do we work together where we make it easier for that vendor to do the creating and the producing of their product rather than the retail and the customer service and the fulfillment. And so figuring out where that line is and like where we can all work together is important. And that's the biggest obstacle that we're dealing with at all times.
Yeah. Britt, can you talk a little bit about sort of getting your product in stores and what that was like sort of in the early stages?
Yes, this is such a special story for me to tell here, actually.
Oh.
I was just telling Sam's mom about it a minute ago. I mean, honestly, so back like when I sort of had like the smallest sort of line of products, Matt was still working full-time as a network engineer, and I was just like sort of tinkering at home with my sewing machine trying to make a few things. I was also making jewelry for a mentor and friend of mine locally. She has like a very successful Etsy shop, and she was sort of guiding me on like how to produce my own retail shop on Etsy, and she was being really amazing, and she was really sad and shocked when I quit my 10-hour-a-week job helping her to sort of focus on what I was doing. And then I went home and like slept on my couch for 3 days. I was sort of paralyzed. The point is, though, the first email I sent out was to Vermont Farm Table, and Sam was there, and she responded like within 30 minutes, and I was like, yes, and brought my stuff in, and that was sort of the first like way to make myself into a store. In the beginning, it just was like courage to just send an email, and fast forward to now, we don't do any sort of wholesale marketing at this time. People just sort of reach out, they see us on Instagram, or I have actually a lot of people that say, oh, so I was in New Hampshire and I was in this store and they love my bag and you might hear from them, and then I get an email. So it's kind of like really cool. I first met Sharon, commandeer in Shelburne, and we were like, oh my God, I can't believe like we're a quarter mile down the road from each other, and sort of getting in locally face to face is really important, and Vermont stores are important, but we're all over the sort of the country right now in different parts, which I'm really excited about.
Is that crazy to say? Like,
yeah, totally.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago that we were standing on
No,
College
it
Street.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Sass just texted me the other day. She's like, I'm in Pittsburgh, and this lady has your bag. Took a picture. I'm like, in the wild. Like, she does. She lives in Panama. So that's really exciting, yeah. And it's funny because I'm still pretty new, and this isn't to be kind of weird, but if I see my bag like in Healthy Living, I'll be like, oh my God, and like I go running the other way. So I'm not used to that sort of happening.
It's like it can see you.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
I'm like,
am I doing here?
like, do they know I made that? Should I tell them?
I still get excited when I see them. When I see them like anywhere in New York City, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, do I talk to them? I'm like, no, there's too much separation.
And I think, honestly, like, I mean, I don't know the percentage. I mean, it's like 90% have to come from you. We do a lot of online Vermont sales, but not nearly as I feel like it's all people are coming
I
to
do think it was
local
funny,
shops.
not to like digress into that,
No,
but like
no.
when you were in Shelburne, we were in Shelburne, people would ask to stop by their studio and they'd be like, no.
Oh yeah.
Just go to Commandeer,
Yeah,
and it was
exactly.
a funny story.
Like that's our house.
Like don't go there.
I'm in my pajamas. It's
Yeah.
not a
It's like,
pretty
I want to
sight.
see the real red house. And you're like, no.
The garden is dying. You don't want to see it.
And we would try to like keep up the story of being like, no, they don't accept visitors at the studio. But yeah, it was,
That's awesome. That's so great.
I have a follow-up question for her.
Oh my God. Sure. I love it.
Q&A hasn't started.
You have a huge Instagram following, and I'm curious as to how that
that's sweet.
happened. Huge.
That's nice of you to say.
Sorry to put
Jen,
on the
you
spot.
stole my
It's okay.
question.
It wasn't on the list.
Unbelievable.
Well, I think your question was around how we grew our brand and our branding and then social media. And I feel like the unique part, in my perspective, to all of this, in hindsight now looking back, is that we sort of unintentionally started a brand before we knew what a brand was and had a business. And the brand is our story, which is us giving up all of our things, looking for that life we really wanted to live, documenting on a blog for my mom to read, which she did, and through that blogging and then Instagramming, it was just people we knew being like, what are they doing in Vermont? And posting pictures, a lot of us and our kids and where we were. So that when we finally sort of turned the corner to have a business, the brand was in place, oddly. And that may happen for other people too, but like the story was sort of easy to tell because it just was the authentic way. And so I think, the feedback I get from customers from all over, email, locally, whatever, is, really love your story, really love what you're doing. So sometimes, and the joke with Matt and I tell him, I'm like, oh my God, I sell so many more bags when I post a picture of the goats than I do of the bags. The bags are on the feed to remind you what I do,
Right.
but
Or your dogs. Your really
the
cute
dogs, people love it, and then I think they buy the bags because they like how they look, but I think they also want to support what we're doing. And then the Instagram, I think there's just been like a few different places along the way where you sort of I read about it online. So I worked really hard in photography and lighting and like getting my aesthetic right and color right. But like I enjoy that anyway as a creative outlet for me, so it sort of comes naturally. But then collaboration with other people who have sort of mentioned us. You know how that goes, and it's a back and forth, and it is what it is now. So it's funny, though, I think no matter where you're at in it, because we started at 0, I took my personal account down, I started Red House, it was 0, and I worked up. But you saying it's really big, I'm looking at, whatever brands. I was introduced to, like, Tata Harper, like the skincare, and I'm like, oh my God, like, that, and that's big to me, and so sort of always just having perspective of, like, knowing you want an authentic audience that engages you. So that's what we go for, strive for. I feel like I'm like
The more like popular Instagram and like branding is, like the easier it is to tell like what's authentic and what's not. And I think even as you guys have grown, it's so obvious like that it's still really authentic, which comes across for sure. Yeah, because like normal people post 800 pictures of their dogs. Like that's just a normal person, It's like that's not a bot. That's definitely a person.
Well, I mean, we're very into living the life we're living. So that is not fake, I'm into what I'm cooking. I'm into where I'm going. I'm into the Vermont roads. And, it's all there to share. Vermont makes it easy, I think. It'd be harder if we were somewhere else, for sure.
Totally. All right, Jen, I want to come over to you. Your products have a super distinct style, like I said before. Those Jen Kahn, everyone can tell. Can you talk a little bit about how you come up with new products?
Yes, let me find my paperwork to guide me.
She's so organized.
Because a lot of these questions are very broad. So I'm like, how far back do I go here? Tessa says don't touch it. I'm not going to lean forward.
I'm going to have to separate these two, actually.
So I started with precious metal clay. Has anyone heard of that? fair amount now.
I have no idea what that is.
Okay.
I'm going to speak
It's-
up for those people in the room.
It's goes by PMC or precious metal clay. It's fine silver particles, an organic binder, and water. You work it like a clay, then you fire it in a kiln, and the binder and water burn off. The fine silver fuses together, and you're left with pure silver. So it's a whole new way to work with metal. Not new anymore. This was like, I found it in 2000, and it came out in Japan in like 95, 96. And my mentor was one of the first people to work with it. She worked with polymer clay, and she was chosen by this metalsmith who brought it over from Japan as one of, he brought it to like another metalsmith and a clay person and a lot of people to introduce it in the US. And she had a few years working with it before I met her, and my baby's in the corner, sorry, it's very exciting. I just also wanted to tell you, if you want to move over there, there's more room for both of you back there. As a new mom, I'm like,
Mom
great.
life,
So, I'm losing my train of thought. Precious metal clay. It's got a very unique look to it. At the time, in the early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of super matte finish jewelry or tribal jewelry, or everything seemed very shiny and and commercial. And I find my stuff kind of looks like people who were in the 60s going back to making jewelry and hammering. And so one of the reasons is it's precious metal clay, a lot of it. And I'm also very inspired by tribal jewelry and ancient artifacts. And my mentor makes there he goes, makes kind of a tribal style of jewelry. And so she also taught me this amazing technique called tearaway, where you can take a black and white image of anything and turn it into a texture, and the process itself creates kind of a matte finish. So early on, all of my jewelry was precious metal clay, and then it's very expensive to work with. So a little bit later, as I started selling more and more at the market, I started working more with sheet metal. And I like to work really big. I like to wear big. And I like to have things be thin and not too heavy for your ears. So hammering is kind of the best way to have a nice look, but also make it not too heavy. And new products, I mean, it's funny, it's anytime I make something for myself, my mom, who's sitting back there, always wants the smaller version. So
Classic.
so I used to have 2 sizes, and then about 4 years ago, once I started selling in more and more stores, I rounded it out to 3 sizes just so I could have a bigger line to wholesale. And I would have 3 metals I work with, sterling and brass and copper, and then I have the 3 sizes. So anytime I come up with a new design, it's a challenge, because fashion industry-wise, it's like every season come up with something, and every year come up with something, and I don't want to give up my old designs that are still really popular, like the crescents. And so I try to come up with new designs while making the old, and now I have like 160 different things that I try to come up with, but I just remake what sells. And trying to think what else. Important things here. Well, another thing I wanted to say was the importance of a mentor, which
Yes.
is huge.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and so early on, I got to be a pioneer in this material, and I used to say it was like being around when like paint was first invented. I mean, this was silver clay, and in college, clay was my favorite medium. I was an English and art major, and I'd worked with everything that I could, any class I could take, and I knew I liked working small, and I knew I liked clay, and then I get this job at Frog Hollow, and a month later meet Celie and see her work. There was like a featured artist wall of her photos, and then a piece of clay, and then this beautiful finished jewelry. And we could cotton kind of getting into how I started.
No, this is great.
I'm like, it all is connected, though. So, well, I'll go back to that if you ask me that question later. I feel like it's too much.
No, it's okay. Keep going. We're good.
Okay. Because I'm trying to answer this question. 1 second. I need some water, sorry.
This is like a real live entrepreneur, you know?
Yeah.
I love it.
Introvert, used to being alone a lot.
Introvert, lots of
Working.
no's.
New mom.
New mom. She's making it very accessible. Everyone can do this.
She's never stopped.
So back to Frog Hollow, which was very life-changing to get that job and to see all of the artists. There was like over 200 artists there that were working in every medium, and I was kind of like, what isn't being made? That was kind of where my head went once I realized that this was an option, because that was your other question was for me. I didn't know I was going to do this, and luckily I just feel like when you're on the right path, things kind of open easily for you, and being at Frog Hollow, meeting Celie, I get to be under her wing for this amazing new material and get into books and jewelry magazines and exhibits. And I was kind of in this very small but really cool PMC jewelry world. And she was trying to kind of groom me to teach, and I just really wanted to make a living selling what I made. So as soon as I got into the artist market, that's kind of when that really started to happen. That's really cool. Sorry.
And so I want to keep going on that sort of mentorship thing. Did any of you guys have sort of mentors that have been really significant for you?
Yes, me.
Yeah.
So when we moved here, and we sort of Matt got a job in Colchester. We moved to Shelburne, and I got a job on Church Street above in like an office. Nobody was really happy. We sort of weren't like settled on what happened when we got here. The kids were used to me being home, and so everybody voted me back to the house. But then I had to, which was great. We're like, if we're gonna just. I like that it was a democracy, though. It was. It was. And so I ended up falling into this, or a friend of mine said, I make jewelry for this woman. She lives, in this neighborhood. She sells on Etsy. Are you interested? And I said, no, I'm home. I'm not interested. But it was almost Christmas, and Matt's like, maybe it's a good idea a little bit. I walked in this woman's house, and it was just like an explosion of color and beauty, and, it was just amazing. I can't even tell you. It just like enveloped me. I was supposed to be just for the holidays. And she immediately hired me, for her main person, which was awesome. And she was doing jewelry, and I was doing that for her with her, and I could just do it because I sort of have good hands for making, which is why I'm good at sewing, I think. But so she didn't teach me my craft per se, but she was like, you can do this, you can sew something, go home and sew something. And I'm like, I don't want to. I want to go home and steward my land and garden. And I did. I was making granola and bread, and everybody got Christmas gifts, horrible Christmas gifts, homemade Christmas gifts. They're a lot better now, the homemade Christmas gifts. But then eventually I was asked to make a pouch, and I started getting into it, and she was just instrumental in helping me, with photography ideas and how to set up an Etsy shop. And it's sort of relatively easy, but then you get into algorithms and, things you don't really know about. And it's how do I get on the front page, and how am I successful in that way? And she just sort of, and what did she say one time? She goes, the cucumber eats the gardener, sort of speak. She's like, when I quit my job, she got really, upset for a minute, and then she goes, no, it makes sense, pushing you out into the world. And we're very good friends. She's amazing. And I really, every time I see her, I'm like, you did this, you did this. She's like, no, you did this. And we have an argument. So I'm so grateful for her, in my life to do that for me.
Anyone else? Sarah?
I wouldn't say a mentor per se, but my mom and I, as a partner, she's probably a mentor to me, and I'm a mentor to her in some weird, odd way. I don't know. But also our makers, I feel are our mentors. We haven't been in the retail game too long, but we are always learning. We're always figuring out how we can make each other's lives easier. So, some of our makers have been in the world for a lot longer than us, so they're kind of teaching us well, this is how another retail store has done it. And so that's been really helpful. And I think it's just, how you can all work together. We haven't, retail is kind of unique in that it's a very, very competitive world.
Yeah.
There's not really hey, how did you sell this thing? That doesn't really happen. No. So, but we are trying to bridge that gap a little bit with different retail partnerships, with the College Street Collide. We brought a bunch of businesses together to support retail in general, because I don't know if anyone knows, but there's like a retail thing happening. But we're all gonna be fine. So just continue to support local retail and we'll all be good.
100%.
Yeah, so.
Awesome. Yeah, please.
Again, we're kind of similar. We didn't have a specific mentor, but I think we listened to some of the right people when we started. We started in 2008. I don't know if you know what was happening in 2008, 2009.
Tough times.
Tough times. But we actually had an accountant friend. I run, and he was a runner. I was
Love
talking about.
those.
Yeah.
Love
Oh my
accountant
God,
friends.
they're great. Actually, get one of those early if you have a business. And he was like, well, you can only go up. Like, you can buy things on the cheap because people are going out of business, and you can go up. And I was like, thank you for saying that, because a lot of, families nervous about you. They want you to be stable. And so I think just like kind of listening to the right people is really important, and not disregarding the other people, but just kind of like letting that boost you up a little bit. And you're like, okay. So, and then we went, I think you might talk about this at some point, but just like local resources, like the community. Like being at the artist market was great because we were seeing other people doing it. That was amazing. And we could talk to them. Like that's been so nice.
the
Because
scenes,
yeah,
like,
we
so
like
what
are like,
shows are you doing?
exactly. Like to find out the shows, to find out the ones that are worth it, the ones that aren't
Don't
worth
waste
it.
your time, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because you are in your house, like, or in your studio a lot. So to have that resource to get out in the community is huge. And yeah, we went to CVOEO. There are like micro business, small business places to talk to. That was helpful. I mean, we were art majors, so we didn't know that side. We kind of fell in love with that side, but we did not know what we were getting into, which is also a good thing.
You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
We have orders to fill, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Tessa, can you talk a little bit about what it's like, as an art major and Tori's an artist too, like how it is to like, do something you're passionate about and make a living with it, and all of a sudden there's money involved and there's orders to be filled, and you still have to figure out a way to be creative. Can you talk about that sort of balancing act?
Exactly. We're kind of in a unique, maybe not in New York, there's a lot of husband and wife deals, but we're like to fulfill our life goals, buy a house, have some kids, if we wanted to do that, we needed to make this work. Like we couldn't, we had to. We didn't have a choice.
Non-negotiable.
Yeah, it's not negotiable. It's not like one of us had like a really great job with insurance, so the other one could like bank off their insurance. No, we needed to make this work. So we were trying early on to make it work, but we didn't have one of my biggest grumps with art programs all around the country is they don't teach you any entrepreneurial skills. Because I'm like, what? That's the same thing. That's the same thing. You go through the classes, you paint, and then you get out, and then
Because you wouldn't go into it if you knew you had to do the
you can't even
business
take
classes.
the
They have to,
business
like,
classes.
Sneak them up on you.
can't. You're not allowed to take the business classes. So it's like, even in like we have employees that are went to art like specific schools, and they don't even have those programs, and it's infuriating. But so I think we were lucky that we kind of knew to focus on that early, like knew to focus on the money, not that like we needed to make a ton, but like if we were going to get a loan for a house, we had to have income. And, and that was a good goal. Like we actually asked the loan person, we're like, so how much income do we need to get a loan for a house? And they give us a number and we're like, that's our goal. Like, like those things build. And
Keep it simple.
to do that, we had to start taking custom orders because selling your own stuff is great, but that's a hustle. And that's like, we love doing it, but we kind of decided to go in the custom printing because of that, because of those goals. So yeah, it's been a mix of both. Yeah.
Awesome. Enough about me for now. I have like so many more questions I want to ask, but I have to share. So I'm going to turn it over to the audience. And you guys are welcome to ask any questions that you have, either specifically for one person or in general. And my colleague, Dave Bradbury, will walk around with a mic as soon as he's done eating whatever he's eating. You good, Dave? Yeah.
Hi. So this question is for Commandeer and New Duds. I happen to use New Duds for some of my product. I am currently developing a kitchen collection that's fully made in Vermont. It's the Hungry Bee. I don't know if you remember, you guys printed my tea towels. And I have assortment of wooden cutting boards and European-style napkin holders. my artwork and some of the background design was done by Aaron Draplin, who I know Commandeer carries a lot of the product, and I actually deliver some of his posters to your store. But so you touched, is it Sarah? Yeah. Okay, so earlier you touched on the difficulty or your challenge of, like, I'd love to have my product in your store, but I feel, and I think it's perfect and it's beautiful and it will stand out, and but I feel that it, coming as a wholesaler, I'm not able to do it. I can only do direct sales, yet that doesn't give me exposure to not only Vermont, but the tourism in Vermont, and also supporting your business and my business and your dad's business. And I also use some of the other vendors that you carry, like Pleasant Ranch, and they do a lot of my wood product. So, but again, you carry all of their product, and I use them as a vendor. So I guess you touched on it, but I didn't really get a clear sense, like, how would you work with someone like me to make my product into your store as well as theirs, and be able for me to compete with those kind of upcharges, if that makes sense.
So when you said that you're unable to do the wholesale market, is it
Margin-wise.
margin-wise? Okay, great. Yeah. So unfortunately, we do have, the retail overhead that's like kind of insane in terms of like employees and like keeping the business afloat. So that's, why we have to have those certain margins in place. But we are, actively trying to come up with ways that we can promote brands that we're not necessarily purchasing at a wholesale rate in the store. So we're looking to come up with ways. Right now there's unique things with running a retail store that we don't actually choose to do commission-based purchases, mainly because I think it actually isn't fair to the maker, because their
Right.
products are just sitting in our store and maybe not being promoted as much because they're next to something that we're making a higher margin on. And then it might get stolen, and then they're like, who actually owes who? Like, what
Right.
happens? So that's, like, retail theft is a thing. Like, that happens, unfortunately. Yes, yes. Yeah, Red House bags hurt a lot when they get stolen. Now they're fully stuffed. It's really hard to steal them now. But yeah, I hear you, and definitely we are always, people or makers are coming to us being like, how do I work with you? I can only do a 20% margin on wholesale, and unfortunately it's tough at this point, but we're trying to come up with something.
I'd have something to add.
Yeah.
I have something to add. I think one of the best things that happened to us early on is we were doing a market in Brooklyn, our first one. We won a booth and went down, and it was a whirlwind of a weekend. We didn't really know what we were doing at all. But a store owner from Vermont who we hadn't met, walked into our booth. She's like, I love what you're doing. I want to, buy it all, but you need to, come see me in my shop in Middlebury. So we walked. I was like, that's great. So a couple days later, I walk in, and she's like, first of all, you're underpriced on everything. Raised all my prices like twice the price, and then bought a ton of stuff from me. So it was an amazing experience. I was like, and I owe her a bit of a life debt because of it. She really hammered it in to price yourself what it's worth. Take a look at your time, your energy, your materials, and really do that equation. You can Google it. There's a bunch of different kinds how you get to that price. And honestly, in the beginning, it just seems like this is ridiculous because most of the time you're pricing yourself out of your own, product. Like, I'm not going to buy this bag for that. Well, I can make it. So
I think that's a great advice because I have been shy to price.
yeah, you need to just.
Because it's my first year of doing product.
Yeah.
It's quality, it's Vermont made, it's Vermont wood, it's Vermont makers. They're all in downtown Burlington.
Yeah.
And everything I do is natural and organic.
Yeah.
Yet I'm very shy to price.
Yeah, don't be trying like.
And I think that's a very good advice. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And leaving room.
I can come and see you.
leaving room,
Yeah.
leaving room for that wholesale markup, I think is
Yeah.
the biggest thing. Because I think the consumer sometimes is like, oh, the wholesale, like, I'm just gonna buy it directly from the maker. But in reality, like, again, like she wants those wholesale clients. 'Cause
Absolutely. I mean,
they're making the
I send
purchase.
people to them all the time. They're like, "Can I come to your studio?" I'm like, "No." Well, you can come say hi, but if you want products, gotta go to Commentary.
And that was my question.
Yeah.
Because I can only do so many direct sales, and I like to
Exactly.
in store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want those wholesale purchases.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it's such a high percentage of Red House bags come from their store, and they've really helped carry. So you're right, and
Good advice.
yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely, if you want to reach out and just run your prices by us and your product, like, there's a whole bunch of information on our website for that. Perfect. Great.
Hi, I have a microphone. Okay. So I'm excited. I'm a customer of all of your goods and products, so it's really fun. My question is around scale, and you all talked a little bit about growth. This took off. This started to go. Things moved more. That's kind of part of your goal, but I'd love to hear your perspective on your approach to growth, decisions you made along the way on how you decided we want to get bigger, we want to do more related to that. Thanks.
Love that question. I should have asked that.
I can start. Yeah. I have, this is along the lines of that failure question you have. Not that I think it's failure, but when we started, I made a lot of sewn products over the past 10 years. And, that's a whole industry in itself. So, yeah. But I think scaling for me made me decide to stop doing that, which is fine. I'm happy with that decision. But I think scaling is huge in the maker industry. And I know, do not take this, it's not the same thing. But there are decisions you make early on about pricing. That's very important to do early on so you don't have to jack up your price later in front of your customers and they all see that. Yeah. Things that, I should have done, I was telling other people to do I wasn't doing, and like Jen was telling me to do and I wasn't doing. But that's a huge part of it in scaling. It's hard to kind of know. You really have to trust your instincts of like whether it's going to work because it's a big leap, when you're scaling you have to buy bigger things cost more like getting employees that costs more, and some of them really work out and other ones I've made the decision to just let go, which is like not because it wasn't selling. That's the other thing. It's like sometimes you just make that decision, you decide to go in a different direction. So I think it's okay to do both, but anyway.
I can speak to that also. Every year I kind of figure out the next step I can take that year. I kind of look at it as the year ahead. What am I going to do this year to grow my business? And I got stuck in my own rat race kind of like the market. I was doing the artist market and Etsy. I started Etsy in 2008. And then one store, I was in Trinket, and I couldn't figure out how to grow beyond that for years. And I would save up my money from May through October from the market, and I'd save it up from my holiday shows. And then January through April, I would live on it, and then I'd be broke again. And I was like, this is not sustainable. So I have to figure out how to get into stores, and that's what I kind of, instead of having a slow time, January through April one year, I was like, all right, there's no break. I'm just going to go straight from my shows to figuring out my formula of like how to build in margins and how to make some stuff faster and how to make it easier and how to simplify some things so I can get into more stores so I can have like an actual income. And now over the past few years, it's so great because I have like half of my income is like from doing it myself, which is always great because you make the full amount. But the other half is making it from stores, which is great because I don't have to be selling that stuff and I can be home with my baby and not having people come to my studio. I can say, there's all the stores out there.
Yeah.
So I think every year just having, you could break it up into smaller chunks and do every 6 months, but kind of being like, what can I do? Any classes you could take locally or, I even took a great how to wholesale online course that was like videos, and I learned a lot from that. And so
Yeah, I think that's good advice, and to like bounce off. I think for us, for our business, we, the one word that would sort of, connect to scaling is intention, sitting down together and kind of like what you said, like, where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? And really going with your gut, one scale that we did that was huge, risk taker, which, was Matt quitting his full-time job and coming home full-time. And I say home because we had like our house. That's where we made our stuff. So we didn't have overhead. And we waited until we were like 85% sure it would work. And then sort of, made, he wrote a business plan. I mean, there's so many things that he did for himself to sort of like give the platform to do that. And then, the last funny sort of scale is we thought we would be in the house at least 2 years after he quit his job, and we're like, okay, we're good. We have a place to make. And we exploded out of that room in a minute. But we waited till the very last second, till he was moving 400 pounds of leather hides to get a T-shirt every morning out of his closet. It was like, this is time. And I just feel like, for makers, for small businesses, you're not necessarily, for us, we weren't like, we want a big factory and 50 people sewing all of these things. It's like, no, we want to be there making. How do we make that happen slowly over time? And then the last thing is like ordering your materials, whatever you're doing. I paid $40 for 1 yard of wax canvas, like the first time, which is a lot of money. We were so broke, and I was like, I gotta have this. I gotta try this fabric, and then buying 5 yards. So it was an investment, and then buying 10, and on until we're now buying like 200, 400 yards at a time. It's unbelievable that I could have never imagined, but it's just those small intentional steps. I'm gonna buy 25 yards this time instead of 5 because I know I'm going to need it, and those kind of things. Small steps.
My answer's really quick to
Yep, go
scale.
We all have an answer.
So like
Keep going, I guess.
retail's like a little bit like gambling. So like every time you buy something, you're like,
Is this gonna
work?
sell?
And like roll the dice here. And so like there's that aspect to it. But then with our scaling, my mom has been like very much she's not the naysayer, but she's kind of like, no, that's not going to work, or that's going to work. And so whenever I've come to her with like these grand, huge ideas that are going to cost tons of money, she's like, let's think about this for a second. And so she's been really part and parcel of like keeping us scaled, which she was the one that was like, let's get a smaller spot in Shelburne, prove the model, and then see if we can scale it. So after the 1.5 years we were in Shelburne, we moved to a much larger spot. So yeah.
Slow and steady. Sam, you got the floor. It's recording. You're good.
I think it's on. Sorry to stay on the topic of scalability, but I'm very much experiencing this issue right now. I'm a sewer. I make leather work gloves, and my company is called Green Mountain Glove Company. We've been around since 1920 in Randolph, Vermont, and I'm seeing some growth right now. Our main marketplace is utility businesses, lineman workers mostly, but we're trying to bridge this gap to reach consumers, and we'd love to sell in a place like Commandeer, but I'm so scared of not being able to fill an order on a consumer basis. I mean, in the wholesale industry, you got a month lead time, and a part of me wants to take my 4 employees and cut back to just 2 of us and be able to do everything make to order, but at the same time, that's not what I'm in it for. I'm in it to create jobs and be a cool, sustainable Vermont company. I'm wondering, it's extremely skilled labor. How do you find that employee that can bring the quality that you're looking for without outsourcing? And
I need you to find out and let me know.
all right. Well, let's talk after.
That because right now, I don't know if everybody in this room knows this, but Matt and I make all the bags. There's nobody else, and we run into people and they're like, "So who makes the bags?" And we're like, "We make the bags."
But you have pursued that. Didn't you like?
So we found. So it's interesting. We just like knew a person from when we moved here, completely, separate from our business. And I saw her at the Orchard. She's an amazing person and really strong and precise. And I knew she'd be great. And I was like, do you want a job? And she's been working with us, so that's been awesome. But I think, our next step, we're right there. We were there 6 months ago, probably. I need to figure out how to hire, and I don't have the answer for you. But from what I've heard, and Sarah can probably help you too, is like, I plan to sort of put it out there on Craigslist and social media and go through resumes and find, people. I'm surprised how many times I run into people who are like, oh yeah, I sew. And I'm like, oh my God, amazing. I'm not the only one, so it feels sort of antiquated to me sometimes because so many things are made far away and we don't really see it hands-on.
And
so we'll talk for sure.
And Britt, I think, I forget exactly when it was, but you were, trying to figure out if there was an option to get your products made. And I think like it was so authentic to your brand that you
that we
were like,
couldn't
I'm
do
not
it.
going to sacrifice quality
No.
and like our story. And that was beautiful. So I think it's really important to like figure out that balance of like, do you want to like become more efficient, or is it like really important that like your business is sustainable with your products being high quality?
And then they deal with our 3-week lead time. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And you build in the lead time that you don't want to disappoint, but if you can get it there early, great. If you can't, so you sort of set that rule for yourself, and then sort of go from there. And I think hire as you need to, but we have like an uncanny ability to make so many handbags, so we just can't stop. We just keep making, but it's time. So yeah, and exactly, we did look at different avenues, and then it goes back to the intentional scaling of like, well, we're looking at somebody in Maine who's been making bags with their family for years, and maybe they could help us with some SKUs, but in the end, that wasn't the direction to go. Yeah.
We have time for one more.
I have the microphone.
all
So
you.
I'm presently in the Women in Small Business course at Mercy Connections, and so we're writing up our business plans. And it sounds like there's a lot of winging it, and you guys are artists, and so I think that that's part of that, although I did hear that Matt did a business plan. Who did business plans, and if you did, like, what was the most important part of that process for you, and if you didn't, are there regrets around that?
I am actually not an entrepreneur, but I work with a lot of them. And I feel like with most business plans, the entrepreneur feels like they need to do one for themselves. And I don't think they know that at the time. I think they're doing it for someone else, but then they realize like 5 years later, they're like, oh, I wrote this entire business plan and I literally haven't looked at it once. But just going through that process is really important. One of the things that Dave and I always teach with entrepreneurs is the business model canvas, which is a much, much, much more scaled down sort of visual version of a business plan. And that's actually, I think, more effective for a lot of entrepreneurs just because it's so like just cut and dry and you can change it. It's going to change. Your business plan is never going to stay the same. So that's sort of where we sort of want entrepreneurs to start. I don't know if you guys have input on that.
When we were working with CVOEO, like 2 years in, we started a business plan. I don't think we ever finished it. But at the time, I thought you needed one if you wanted to get a loan. And I'm pretty sure that's still true. I think you need a business yeah. We didn't need a loan at that time. We were just growing within, ourselves. And that was working. So that's probably, that would have been a big push to finish that business plan. But we always do have that, because we have each other, Tori's over there, we have very intense business meetings about the growth of the business and usually in the car. I don't know if anybody else finds that. You're trapped together. You can't leave. Those are a great time to communicate. So I think we kind of check in with, it was nice to know what the business plan had on it and like what those questions were. And we were like, we don't need to answer some of these, like we were young and stupid. And And like, but it's nice to know like, oh, this is what businesses do. Yeah, we are artists. We didn't know that these were questions we should be asking ourselves. Like, why are we selling this thing that's making no money? I mean, no whatsoever. So I think working with them and then starting it at least was helpful to us, but it did seem very daunting. So I'm interested in this like smaller scale back. It did seem scary, yeah, when we were starting. Now I could probably fill out most of it. It'd be fine. Yeah, afterwards.
Awesome.
I did one a few years ago in this wholesale course. It was in preparation for this huge trade show, New York Now at the Javits Center, and so it wasn't geared towards like getting a loan or anything, but it was, it was awesome. It was like going back to school, but like being really psyched and being like, I know the answers to this. Like my customers tend to go to yoga and like shop, like because it's like who are your customer base? Yeah, my demographic, and
It's almost better once you're started.
yeah, so it was really fun to kind of do like that part of it, but I haven't looked at it now for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I'm also not, I've always been like this slow growing. I mean, I had a studio for a couple of years out of the house, but then I had a baby, so I'm back in the house, so I'm not at that, I'm just trying to sustain where I'm at, and yeah.
Awesome. All right, I think we gotta send you guys home. It's been sort of
This
a
was
sort of
so
while.
fun.
Sam, do you want to give your dad the last question?
Yeah, Dad, do you have a question?
Nope, not
No
at all.
question from Dad. All right, thank you to our speakers for coming. You guys are awesome. Give them a round.